Hello, I'm Noel. I uploaded the video of Cheonjin eating several times, but I only didn't do the equipment part. When it comes to equipment, they usually fight with the long arm object they're holding, but if they fall to the floor, they end up fighting barehanded. Personally, I think in Cheonjin's eating 2, once you get on the horse, the game becomes quite a bit easier. As I keep spinning the weapon I'm using, all I have to do is simply input BB. It's also quite easy to reach, and I like that you can quickly move and deal big damage in an instant. For reference, you can also use the screwdriver as a hidden skill, but the requirements are pretty strict, so I just gave up on that skill. Following the same patterns as the previous videos makes proceeding with the hill stage quite easy. Since only similar enemies keep appearing, I'll just keep running through them and head straight to the boss battle. The name of the stage boss is Zhang. Since it's a tutorial boss, you can easily defeat it even with random attacks and talking to the enemies as if they were clams. It hasn't been long since I met Zhang, but I've already reduced his health to almost nothing. Stage 1 follows the strategy of defending and repeating attacks, but Zhang, despite holding his ground, is portrayed as a character who gets defeated easily early on. Now, he doesn't actually die here, but since it's a game, he inevitably meets his end. Stage 2 follows the Stage 2 continuing from Stage 1. Unlike Stage 1, more annoying enemies appear, such as archers, swordsmen, and melee fighters. Other minions go down quickly if you hit them a bit, but the muscle fighters have pretty high health, so you have to hit them for quite a while. If the engineer is a bit far away, he'll use his gun, and since the dagger guy's reach is pretty short, it's best to take him out first if possible. For reference, a lot of people think you can only throw the shield straight ahead when using it as a weapon, but actually, you can throw it backward as well. To do this, when the throwing motion comes up, you just need to input the direction key backward from your character. It's quite difficult to use as a high-level technique, but I think it's easier than a screwdriver. If you want to use the screwdriver, rotate the lever once and press the attack button when you're at a distance where you can grab. But I gave up on trying to pull that off because I died way too many times. Since I recorded instead of doing a live broadcast and watched it later, I realized I didn't have enough content for a full 50-minute video. Since I can only skip the drowsiness part from now on, except for boss fights, I'll try to fast forward everything at double speed. As you play the game, you don't really need to make choices, and honestly, isn't this the kind of game where everyone at least clears the first stage? In Cheonji, the default character equipment settings are 250 centimeters in height and 110 kg in weight. His weight seems low relative to his height. Now, at the beginning of the preliminary round, he meets Zhang Han. Han, who is in a state of rage, can even throw a spear while launching a jump attack. However, since it's an attack that can be countered immediately, it's a technique you should use with caution. Dismounting the horse creates an opening to remount. During the remount, you move quickly but can't attack, leaving you vulnerable to Han's attacks. Han can be a tough boss if you don't know his pattern, even on the normal E stage. You may get hit and thrown by his bombs, or he might suddenly charge at you. Merely dodging or blocking his attacks can be challenging. Once you knock down Hodden, immediately use the Y dash to avoid his counterattack. If you can't see Hodden on the screen, he might jump and attack you, so you need to keep moving. Sometimes he'll even breathe fire, but this isn't a major threat. Naturally, if you do get hit, you'll take significant damage. If you fight as carefully as possible, you can minimize the damage and clear it quickly. Before the next official stage begins, there is a short bonus stage. It's a stage where you have to spin the lever quickly, so as someone using a keyboard, I can never beat the central processing unit. As a kid, I wanted to try the meat I saw in cartoons, so I asked my mom. She slapped my back, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Stage 3 is a new area. It's a place where you go through a fairly short section until you reach the location of the stage. Special little monsters that you see when you play also start appearing from Stage 3. Fictional is also the place where Yubi was hiding from the pursuers in the rain. If you organize the enemies here a bit, you can move forward again. I took some damage by advancing without thinking, but a health recovery item appears. After getting back on the horse, I can ride faster and take care of enemies along the way. This attack method is a bit risky, but it's not like you can deal with them that quickly anyway. Getting off and fighting feels like you're fighting all day pointlessly. Now, once you go inside the building, you'll be able to face Heijō, the boss of this stage. Even though it's only Stage 3, Heijō has the most health among all the bosses so far. To avoid his club swings, keep your distance and try moving along the Y-axis when possible. If you're riding the horse, you can fight just as effectively with only BB, just like when you're up against the wolves. If you use fire above the enemy, you can deal damage to the enemies on the screen, but after you use fire, stronger wolves will appear. You need to think carefully before you use it. For reference, just because the character is facing the direction of the net doesn't mean it will always hit, and even though the damage is strong, if you don't have luck, sometimes the boss will keep dodging your attacks. That's why it's best to rely on overwhelming reach and mobility. Enemies that were previously hidden will now start appearing during the chase. The club-wielding enemies were tough, even in direct combat. Fighting them silently led to my frequent demise. In many games, I relied on dodging and agility, but most of the time I died from getting hit or falling off cliffs. In reality, you die after just a few hits. And in games, various novels, and comics, he's usually portrayed as a very masculine and fierce character. But in reality, if someone praised him, he would blush and get embarrassed. And on the battlefield, he was usually gentle and showed a reserved personality. Although Heijō was very strong physically, fortunately his fighting style wasn't that complicated, so it didn't take much time to master it either. There is one question about Heijō who appears in various media. I don't know why everyone always portrays Heijō as a brute. The New Night Star's final battle is against the demons Mameng, Miho, and Miryung in that order from top to bottom. It's true that he's a boss, but that just means he has a lot of stamina and is somewhat of a strong brute. They have various attack patterns from close-range melee to throwing knives at a distance. Among the bosses, these are the only friends uniquely created for this game. It may look like they were just made up, but when you watch their movements, you can see the spirit of Street Fighter. But since they were made by the same company on the same Capcom play system, one hardware, it's only natural that they resemble each other. The flying car motion closely resembles Ryu's jumping kick motion. However, the attack frames themselves are so short that the recovery frames come out almost immediately. If these guys' jump attack frames were longer, the difficulty of this stage would have gone through the roof. But Capcom, who still didn't have the ability to make a balance patch, just threw it in without much thought. It appears Capcom still struggles with game balance in their recent titles. Stage 4 is a white background. With a sudden drop in gravity, special enemies start to appear. Most of the enemies that appear from now on tend to sneak behind your character, so if possible, it's safest and easiest to gather them to one side and take them out all at once. Be cautious when both regular and special enemies appear simultaneously to prevent them from flanking you. Additionally, in this game, during the throwing motion, you can make good use of the fact that the hit detection disappears, so you can progress through the game while taking hits. When grabbing an enemy, if you hold the direction key down or up while pressing A to throw, you can perform a final move to grab and throw the enemy in that direction. With other characters, throwing enemies backward is even easier. Getting used to this allows more leeway to assess the situation and clear stages faster. Normally, even people who said they could never beat a game like this without infinite continues will definitely find it easier and be able to clear it more often than just using infinite coins. After that, the content will change, depending on things like pattern analysis or character training. The rumor that our Janma said he could do this alone because he was skilled turned out to be false. So what about the dungeon clearing itself? Since the game made by the same company, Catlalic and Dinosaurs can also be played in the same way, I personally think that the challenge itself in Wancoin is easier than in Knights of the Round 2. There are videos of Cadillac that were cleared on live broadcasts in the past, so if you're curious, please check them out. If you clear only the Heichion section here, you can fight the boss right away. They're not really anything special, just mobs, but they have a lot of health, so it takes quite a while to fight them. It seems to have patterns and positions similar to Androa's final fight in Gunyukman. When you play it at double speed, the sound effects of the equipment are actually pretty cute. This is the boss introduction for Becca's Stagey. After grabbing this friend with the tentacle, you drain its health by dragging it toward direction key A. If other enemies come, you can throw it at them, and if there are none, you can just drop it and grab it again to keep tormenting it. Since this friend attacks with a guard-breaking move, it's actually quite dangerous to try tricks like this. It's safer and a more straightforward clear method to just defeat it directly. Since Joey can attack in both directions, you shouldn't let your guard down if possible. With this method, I was able to reduce the boss's health by half or more before the reinforcements appeared. Even though there were a lot of archers, this strategy is still very usable. Just like before, it's tempting to use the gold room's damage right away, so you need to be careful. One easy thing to note is that when you hit enemies with the throw, enemies that get hit by the splash damage really take very little damage. So if possible, it's best to use the throw with equipment. Of course, since I'm not very skilled, I'm just throwing as best as I can. I believe the best equipment in Let's Eat Celestial Jade 2 is the Join. All other equipment seem like poison bosses in comparison. The timing for catching is random, so you might not get a bite. If you try to hook it twice, but only get one bite and it falls off, you can't even catch it regularly, which is unsatisfying. The grappling boss is good for Join, but also useful for the next stage boss, so keep that in mind. Since you have plenty of stamina, you can easily mash AB, which is nice. Personally, I think this is a weapon fight that feels like the highlight of the equipment. They say that Zhang Fei and his men drove back a massive army of about 20, but I wonder if that's really possible. Still, since the records say so, I guess we just have to believe it. At first, there's no need to catch all the enemies that appear. When you get the signal to advance, you can just move forward. Ma Chao, who murdered Ma Teng, has launched an attack. The generals are pledging to confront him in battle. These friends in the background cheer you on, but you may not recognize them yet. I'm still not sure if those are JoJo's soldiers, or if they're just people cheering for the player. Just by looking at their outfits, they seem like JoJo's men, but they're cheering and saying it's good when animals get hit, and if they're cheering for the player, wouldn't it be weird for them to just stand by and clap while the player fights alone? One thing's for sure, these guys definitely aren't animal lovers. As soon as you get out of this area, you can meet Stage Boss. I lost quite a bit of health fighting the quiet ones, but there's really nothing to worry about. That's because if you just know the boss's patterns, the second boss is the easiest to beat out of all the bosses. The boss that looks like a mountain goat is the second stage boss. If you just lure him to the top left corner with a rock, the strategy is actually more than half successful. As long as you don't make any mistakes, the minions usually don't come up to the top, so it's fine. Technically, you could even fight with just a whip and win, but that's a bit of an extreme technique. If you keep stacking traps like this in the cave, you can easily deal massive damage in no time. The enemies try to move, but they can't get close to the player. Just hit them. If you try to fight them like this, they're pretty weak, so it's easy to take them down. Honestly, this guy is all about this, so there's really nothing else to explain. He just keeps charging at you. Sometimes bats might come in the middle, but it's nothing special. You can just kill them easily with a ranged attack from the corner. Having defeated Sun Woo-do, it's time to meet the boss. You must go through the small room first. To save the oblivious man, Lady Yubi stops breathing while Cho-eun carries him out the main entrance. But as Zhang B, I'll run out as myself. Later, while Yubi was holding Adu, Cho-eun nearly lost him and even claimed to have thrown the child on the floor. If Adu had stopped breathing then, it would have turned tragic. I've seen polarizing opinions about Adu, but personally, I feel like what I saw was his most human side, rather than judging him as good or bad. If it were me, my neck would have flown off right away, but he just laughed it off and let it go. Regarding this, Adu was so vague that some people even said maybe the execution method was skipped. In modern China, did Adu become a symbol for supporting useless and incompetent people? Now I'm starting the game and fighting with a weapon for the first time. Having this weapon will make it a bit easier to clear this stage. Even a single hit from it deals significant damage without knocking down enemies, making it useful for dealing heavy blows. It also simplifies the process of obtaining high-grade items later in the game. Heian will appear soon after talking, and since you'll have to run away, this knife will be helpful. When you catch Heian, you can get the Blue Phoenix sword like this. In the lore, Yangyi's sword used to defeat Heian became legendary, though not mentioned in the main story. However, the Blue Phoenix sword is actually the Oyak sword, and the Cheongang sword is the correct one. Also, among JoJo's famous swords, this sword is considered to be a really great one. The sword is similar to others, but a single swing defeats all enemies. For this boss fight with two bosses, using a weapon with strong knockdown is very useful. Here too, there is a process to get high-grade items. Ha Woo-gul has low health, while En-myung has high health. To get the Sacred Sword, first defeat Ha Woo-gul, who has low health. However, the Sacred Sword is not dropped by Ha Woo-gul, but by the Sword Trainee. Since the Sword Trainee also has quite a lot of health, and you have to defeat Ha Woo-gul first, it's better to chip away at their health in advance. Actually, it's just because of the video that I'm trying to get the Sacred Sword, and personally, there's nothing particularly different about it. If you're going for a spawning, it's actually more efficient to deal with Ha-on-go late. But the boss's new patterns are pretty tricky, right? I just used the same strategy and palette as before with Lee Jun and Heo-geo. The pattern has changed a little, but honestly, it's easier than the bosses we met before. Maybe because if you try to play it safe, you might get hit unexpectedly. I got knocked out. Since losing my weapon, I must fight the mutant wolves with my bare hands. Fan Zhang is holding a weapon with this effect, but other than the design, it doesn't have any special features. Still, when I first got this weapon as a kid, my heart was pounding for no reason. Honestly, if you look at it, it's not even worth getting attached to, so I'll try to dismantle it. Next is the Seven Heavens, a bonus stage with no place to rest. If you kill the falling statues before they flee, you'll be okay. When the statue falls, the player can avoid getting hit by moving down at that moment, taking no damage. The fight to reclaim the Heavenly Land in a DDE Cheonji Reborn 2 is also a stage where you can get knocked down. The Battle of Red Cliffs is really fun to watch as a movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check it out. I rarely rewatch movies, but I've seen the Battle of Red Cliffs multiple times. The hammer I'm using right now is honestly the best weapon I've ever used until I get the ultimate item. Despite hitting hard, enemies only get stunned, not knocked down, making it quick and easy to defeat them. Even without this weapon, it's not like fighting is impossible, but without it, it does take quite a bit more time. Gather enemies together and blow them away in one attack. However, the downside of the hammer is that it sometimes doesn't hit enemies that are too close. So it's important to start with a grab attack, but make sure not to get stuck to the enemy. Now, Hammer is going to say goodbye and take a break. If you look at the top left of the screen, you'll see a box pop up. The official name is Excalibur, but I'll just call it the Fire Sword for simplicity. It's a pretty powerful weapon, and as long as you don't lose this sword and meet the boss, clearing it becomes really easy. The Fire Sword was forged in a volcano, likely the origin of its name. It might be the first elemental sword in games of this type. I believe this is the best weapon available before obtaining the Master Sword. Of course, in terms of actual performance, the Fire Sword you're using right now is much better. Even though I got the sword a bit late, it's still a weapon I can use at least before the boss fight. The boss, who is a stage boss in the ship full of tension, uses equipment and gear against you. As I mentioned earlier, as long as you have this, the equipment is really a lifesaver. If you just hold your ground and don't lose this weapon, this boss fight will be very easy. So in the end, what you really need to watch out for are the special minions that run at you from both sides. The boss is so slow that you can easily hit it by pressing A when it's about to attack. Quickly defeat the minions if they try to circle behind you, as that's crucial. Actually, you don't have to use this Fire Sword. It's also good to just use a hammer. That's because the stun effect of the hammer works on the boss as well, so you can deal a bit more damage with it compared to the Fire Sword. For a stable clear, choose the Fire Sword. For a faster clear, use the hammer. This is Stage Cliff Battle 2, where you go in physically to catch the boss. This stage has the longest section compared to the others. This section lacks new enemies or unique features. It solely serves to prolong gameplay. To be honest, there's nothing to say, and I just felt like they made it live for the sake of it. So what I want to say is just skip through until the boss fight and go straight to the boss battle. It's a bit dull with no dialogue after the bar drops and the text fades, but you can skip ahead if you want. Boss Jiangsu Soyoung is a tough opponent if fought directly. However, with the hammer we picked up, you can clear the fight easily. As I mentioned earlier, the hammer's stun effect also works on the boss, so if you just keep swinging it, you can quickly take away a huge chunk of the boss's health in no time. If you see that you can't even get close, just keep dodging right away. The pattern is similar to Sunud, but since there are no minions, you can only fight like this. In fact, the biggest difficulty with Wonko is also his timing. So Wanja must also handle the minions' little ones, so stay vigilant or face trouble. After learning a bit about Sewang, I realized there were some surprising parts as well. He was a person with a very strict and frugal character, but it was said that the reason his servants and subordinates couldn't even eat properly was because of Sewang. To that extent, it seems that he exploited the people under him tremendously. And it is said that he even laughed and asked if his servants had ever worn silk robes. Despite his subordinates' admiration for his military prowess, I believe his arrogance led to his downfall. He had a brief tenure and insufficient time to demonstrate his allegiance to Cao Cao or develop strong ties with his superiors. He was quite close with Guan Yu, but for the sake of official duties, he suddenly told his soldiers to kill him. Honestly, he seems very cold and calculating. There's also something else to consider. Wang Ping once said that ignoring what is right and just for the sake of personal feelings would only lead to defeat, so he told his soldiers to fight decisively and win. Furious, Wang Ping rebelled against Zhuge. Sheng Wang, not admitting his mistake, told Zhuge that Wang Ping had betrayed him and died in battle. In both the military and the workplace, situations like this are common. It honestly makes me want to quit. But what's even more frustrating is that people like this are trusted by their superiors, so you can't even say anything and just have to hold it in. This is the final stage of adaptation. You can immediately obtain the second ultimate sword, the game's best weapon, by consuming the Cheonji at the beginning. As soon as you start, if you hit the upper left corner, a box will drop. In English, it's called the Sword of Salvation, but you can pretty much wipe out the enemies in one hit. However, since it's a cursed sword, you can't use it when fighting the final boss, and there's a trial in the middle where you're forced to throw away your weapon. Actually, that's true. If you were to fight the boss with this, the boss would probably be way too easy. Now, this is the only place where you can try using the beginner's sword. Still, personally, I think if you could use it right up until just before fighting the boss, the game would have progressed a bit more speedily. Now, this is where the muscle guys appear. These guys hanging around are likely annoying for you too. Let's go straight to the boss. This is the Yukeon sword, one of JoJo's swords. It's a legendary, imaginary longsword from Chinese novels that doesn't actually exist. When attacking, after the third hit, you can knock down the enemy, and even if they are knocked away, there is a low chance that they will disappear. This is a unique characteristic. In the story, the final boss appears in the form of a fox, not as a human. It is said that JoJo caught the fox and is carrying it on his back to save it. The final boss's difficulty is quite high. Not only does it defend itself, but it also attacks with very fast movement speed and a long reach. Because it can even perform Mega Crush attacks, its difficulty is considerably high. So if you don't have the Divine Sword, you have to fight mainly using grab attacks, but it's not easy to get close to the boss. Rather than trying to deal big damage, it's better to safely get behind and quickly dodge to a safe spot. Sometimes when you try to dodge like this, you might still get hit by the sword and take a lot of damage, so there are times when your health drops unexpectedly. But if you manage to keep your minions alive, you can fight the boss at a decent level, and sometimes the minions in the middle even drop recovery items. I think it's clear that even when you test this on the captain's side, the aggro is pulled more than you might expect. It was possible to defeat Yeopo with the hack version, but it was so easy that it took away all the fun of playing the game. Since it comes rushing in so quickly, honestly, it's hard to react to it. Did you just see how he tried to push me away even as he was getting hit? For reference, the first relationship on the side wasn't official, it was just a personal connection. I also learned about this for the first time while looking into the side story. He was fine for several generations, but then his health suddenly deteriorated. Even though I liked the character's personality, I thought he would remain as a really cool person, but he gave up even his good nature, so that's all I can say about this case. These days, in Samgukji games, he often appears as a pretty cool character, but I don't understand why someone who only betrayed and wandered around is considered admirable. In modern times, rather than focusing on the traitorous side of Yeopo, he is often portrayed as a romantic figure through the fictional character of Chosun. As I kept talking about him, I started to see the bottom of Yopo's reputation. Honestly, when he took 3 hits earlier, I wondered if Nodai was just a pushover, but it turns out he was able to confidently call himself Nodai in the match against Suneo. After a difficult struggle, his fate hangs in the balance. Will he live or die? Only time will tell. Honestly, it might sound strange, but I think I'll choose to kill JoJo. Since he's a close friend who always sticks by me, I have no hesitation. If you don't kill JoJo, you'll immediately see the scenario where the ending is a total failure. To get a happy ending in the game, you must defeat JoJo within the time limit. So as a bonus, I played Samgukji and Ate Cheonji twice. Since I rushed through it, honestly, if you just play normally, it takes about an hour. There are too many boring and repetitive grinding sections. These days, even if I tell my younger friends to play it, they get bored and quit right away. But our generation played it with all our hearts because of the nostalgia of the arcade era. I don't remember exactly whether I played this for 51 or 101, but I do remember spending a ton of coins on this game at the arcade. Lee Sang, that's all for now. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks.